Some of the policy declarations and resolutions made by the party as they resumed the conference yesterday. And for that, we are joined by political analyst Doctor Ntsikelelo Breakfast. Dr. Breakfast, a good morning to you, and thank you so much for your time, firstly.
Thank you very much for having me.
An absolute pleasure. I think there's so much to touch on, really. I think one of the big themes coming out of this as they wrap up the 55th National Conference has been the party talking about its renewal, Dr. Breakfast. What does that for you say to you? So what does that say to you about how successful they're going to be in being able to bring that renewal about? They've talked about for them to be able to bring the necessary transformation to the country, the party needs to transform itself. How do we ensure that that's rhetoric, that's not just rhetoric, but something that comes with action?
Naledi, I think the document on strategy and tactics, in my opinion, gives a nice summation of what came out of the commissions on matters of policy. Just for the benefit of the viewers, the document on strategy and tactics focuses on ways and means of operationalizing the NDR, which is the two-stage theory of the ANC. So on a global scale, I mean, they focus on the fact that neoliberalism still remains a mainstream model of development, and that in our own backyard we cannot apply that because we have this divide between the haves and also the have-nots. Therefore, you need a strong state to lead the project of a development. No wonder the ANC at this conference has reaffirmed its a position that it still looks up to Asian tigers as a model of a development. But the problem is that if you look at that model of developmentalism, those economies of Malaysia, China, Taiwan, Singapore, Japan, they had, professionalized administration, as opposed to what is happening in our country, whereby people are being deployed even though they don't have the necessary skills. So they need to work on that. But domestically, I agree with them by singling out the issue of gender-based violence as a threat to a society, because it looks like, we as men, we still don't want to let go of our own privileges. And also they are focusing on the issue of social security. I know that some of the so-called neoliberal economists might have a problem with that because of budget deficit. So they say all the right things, but I think the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So the issue of implementation is going to be very much important. But in terms of the state of affairs of the ANC, in terms of a renewal, I think they have a fundamental problem, because I don't think that the divisions between radical economic transformation and the CR22 faction are going to go away, because ANC is a political party and people are going to continue contesting power. People don't want to let go of political power, because political power gives you political protection. So I think those political cleavages, we are still going to see them. I think the issue of unity is a mission impossible.
I want to sit with that thought for a little bit, because when we talk about RET, I think over the last few years, when we say radical economic transformation, we start thinking of a grouping within the party, and we have almost forgotten that radical economic transformation was an economic proposal on how we start to transform the economy. When you had NEC member David Makura essentially talking about bringing economic transformation into the party, one wonders where that RET economic policy sits there, and is it something that is still being talked about without using the words because of how divisive that may seem at this point?
Naledi, let me be a bit controversial. Yes, you are on point. Radical economic transformation has been adopted as a political program of the ANC. So it is a brainchild of a particular faction. It came from a particular faction, the faction of Msholozi. That's why some people say Msholozi is a founding father of radical economic transformation. But my view is that the radical economic transformation is a form of nativism. It is a form of populism that emerged in the second half of the 20th century that is used by the political elite to hold on to power by trying to, romanticize about the past. We saw that even in Zimbabwe, when there was a threat to ZANU PF, when they experienced some kind of electoral decline, then they started talking about the return of the stolen land. And so there's nothing new about that. But also there are other politics. We know about Bell, Pottinger, there are involvement and so on. So there are a lot of politics there. But of course, the ANC has adopted radical economic transformation to focus on the subversion of the relationship between the powerless and the powerful.
Right.
So I think that is good because we need to restructure our economy.
Yeah, and I really wanted to clear that up. I think a big one that we were all really looking out for as they wrapped up the 55th National Conference was what the party was going to decide with regards to the step-aside rule, right? And what we've seen there is the party deciding that they are reaffirming their step-aside policy, and those involved, their cases will be looked at every 6 months. I mean, what do you make of that, Dr. Breakfast?
Naledi, I'm not taken aback by that. I saw it coming. I'll tell you why. Because there was a sign at the previous conference that the step-aside principle was going to be retained.
We'll get back to step-aside, Dr. Breakfast, but let's talk to the visuals that we are seeing right now. We are essentially talking about a leadership of the party that is walking into a party that has serious financial challenges. Gwen Ramakopa, now Treasurer General, tasked with being able to balance out that balance sheet for the party. And events like this, really for the party, them wanting to bring some of the funds in. What does this look like? Is this a party, as you look at some of these visuals, that is able to get its finances back up, to pay its staff members and show that it has solid organizational structure?
Naledi, I think it's an open secret that the ANC has been found wanting on matters of finance. Its employees have not been paid on time. But I think it has been affected by the political party funding a bill, because it demands that now those who are funding political parties have to disclose how much they are giving them if the amount is above, I think, a particular threshold. So now some people don't want to be seen because you don't want a situation whereby when you are doing business with government, people can connect the dots that, okay, this one got this business because he gave this amount of money to this party. So the ANC has been affected by that, but I think they are trying to turn the tide around. But we'll see how it goes in that regard.
And let's go back to the step-aside rule. I go back to the point that I made earlier, that this was certainly one of the more contentious issues that the ANC was going to be dealing with as they started making their policy decisions about their way forward. They've reaffirmed the step-aside policy. And then they've said that for those involved, they will review their cases every 6 months. What do you make of that? And I'd cut you off as you started that thought.
Yeah, the step-aside principle is all well and good, Naledi, in theory, but in practice, it has been applied selectively. Those who are aligned to a particular faction, they tend to be exempted from it, and it tends to escalate the divisions within the party. But it's good that now, every now and then they are going to take a step back, review cases and so on. But if it is underpinned by factionalism, I think that is going to worsen the divisions within the party. But the rationale behind it is good because, the ANC has been affected by institutionalization of corruption, and trying to renew itself, it decided to, introduce it.
I mean, we certainly are seeing a party that is right now very much still at the beginning of its pomp and ceremony post 55th National Conference phase, right? And so right after this, you've got the president of the party is going to be delivering the January 8 statement. I remember our political reporter, Samkele Maseko, reminding viewers of that particular statement on the 8th of January, formerly in previous years as seen as umkombandlela, an opportunity for the party to refocus and set goals and give instruction to its members about what they need to be doing next. What's the message that you're wanting to hear from the president as he prepares that January 8 statement? Is there anything new, certainly, that the president can put into that statement?
Yeah, I understand the historical background of the January the 8th statement, but I think normally it tends to be a feeder system to the State of the Nation address. It tends to set the scene in terms of what we might expect. So I think, he has to inspire hope. Inequality, poverty, unemployment, they still remain the major security threats in the country. And we need a plan on that, and we need a government that cares. And we need a commitment from him and his team.
Dr. Breakfast, I think we came out of December and we had the top 7 of the party. I'm keen to hear your view on the makeup of the party's top 7. I think that would be quite interesting. And if this is the top 7 that is able to carry the party into 2023, a critical year for the party where they will be needing to put their best foot forward for the elections next year.
Well, it looks like the president has won the political battle, but he has not won the legal battle as yet surrounding the issue of Phala. I think he's got a good team. I think his strategic advantage now is the synergy between himself and Mbalula, because in the past, the SG and the president were not speaking the same language. So now there is that synergy which fits into the work of the party. Let's see how it goes. But the president, I think he needs to think strategically, Naledi, because elections are just around at the corner. So he needs to make sure that he takes on board even the people who did not support him, because he needs those people. He cannot go to KZN on his own. So he needs those people to, work alongside him so that he can improve the electoral performance of the ANC, because the possibility that the ANC can lose power is not a mission impossible, or is not far-fetched. Therefore, he needs to think critically going forward.
I think there's something to be said about the fact that, though, for the past year, what you did see was a lot of wrangling within the ANC for them to rally each other around preparing for the 55th National Conference. It's just wrapped up. And now the focus needs to be rallying South Africans to go to the polls and vote for the party of their choice. But in the meantime, though, South Africans on the outside of the party have been watching the rallying inside the party. As you look at the party in its position right now, what is it saying to South Africans, particularly as we start to think about the decisions we make a year from now?
Naledi, I think going forward, there are two possibilities, because what gives the ANC an upper hand is the fact that when you examine the state of affairs of our opposition parties, they don't function as a unit. They are fragmented, and that gives the ANC an upper hand, despite the fact that it falls short of getting the job done. So if opposition parties don't function as a unified force, the ANC can bounce back to power, even though it is not doing well. Because opposition parties, they failed to capture the imagination of the citizens of this country. But at the same time, if they can put their differences aside, if you look at coalition formations, they are falling apart. So they need to work on those differences. But I think these elections that are upcoming are going to be extremely important. we might have some interesting surprises.